Questions?
What will tomorrow look like? You talked about some website improvements. What's it going to look like tomorrow? Is it going to be a lot simpler, a lot easier? People aren't going to have to worry about the website crashing?
I think a lot of the work that's been done over the past week has been designed specifically to make sure that the website can handle extraordinary volume over a very short period of time, which is basically what happened last week. And we believe the waiting room in particular will, which is a tool that a lot of people use when they don't know exactly how much traffic they're going to have, will be a very important part of making sure that people have access to the site and the ability to determine if they can make an appointment.
It's a lot simpler. Is that how you characterize it? How would you characterize it?
Well, I think the first thing is to make sure that the site itself actually performs. The site did deliver 50,000 appointments last week on the day that it crashed in the morning, but it was a really rough and rocky user experience. I think what I would say for tomorrow, the most important thing from our point of view is that the experience be predictable. There are additional features that people are going to be adding to the site on a go-forward basis that I think will make the user experience better than it is now. But the most important thing we want tomorrow for people is that that experience is predictable.
What else are you looking at?
Pardon me?
What else are you looking at? What other?
Well, several people have raised issues about developing some sort of mechanism to make it possible to sort of freeze an appointment if you find one, and then begin the process of filling in the information. There are multiple entities that website connects to, so we have to figure out a way to make sure that we can hold through other people's systems to make that work. But that's something many people have expressed an interest in having us do, and it's something that we plan to put in place.
Governor, would you encourage people who are eligible to maybe wait a week or two to kind of keep that rush tomorrow down? Put that.
You know, we've been saying for a while now that we have more than enough capacity to serve a lot of people in Massachusetts on a daily basis. And today is kind of one more example of what I mean by that. But we have a really limited supply. And because we have a limited supply, it simply won't be possible for everybody who is eligible and wants to get vaccinated to get vaccinated. However, over the course of several weeks, you know, even if it's at 130,000 first doses a week, we can move through a lot of people. If you think about the 75 and over population, they went live 3 weeks ago, and over 350,000 of them at this point have gotten their first dose. So, you know, it will happen. The big issue is it just takes longer than anybody would want it to. If the news that came out of Washington actually translates into really significant increases in supply that are being made available to states and to vaccination sites and providers and everybody else around the country, starting in March, is real, and J&J is in a position to actually start distributing and enhancing their manufacturing capability, we might end up in a point where we would have enough vaccine to actually service the capacity we've already got in place, which would significantly improve how fast people could get their appointment, how fast they could get through the system, and would make everybody a heck of a lot happier. But I do think if you don't get an appointment tomorrow or over the weekend, the message I would say is you will, right? You will get an appointment. If you look at this from the beginning, I mean, 1.1 million people in Massachusetts have been vaccinated since this started at the end of December. People will get an appointment. They will get vaccinated. The real big outstanding question is how much capacity are we going to have from the feds, and how fast is the amount that we get from them going to go up?
When do you hear from the feds the next number? Is that a Wednesday night thing?
I think isn't it a Wednesday night thing? I mean, the number we're getting next week, I think, is 139? Is that right? 100 of first doses?
So it's the same number, the supply hasn't changed. What the federal government has indicated is the expectation that every Pfizer vial now should have 6 doses rather than 5. So it looks like we're getting a little bit of an increase. So there's no difference
instead of 5, yeah.
Starting next week? Starting next week.
Governor, we can just talk about reopening. If you ended your comments with the health data doing really well for the last few weeks. Capacity, more things opening. People have been asking us, business owners wanting a breakdown, they've been cooperating, get the numbers down.
We've been working through a bunch of issues with a number of folks in the employer community about this, and we will have more to say about it this week, but it won't be today.
Governor, could I ask you about the timing? Last week you had said 8 a.m., you might want to check that, and then, you know, it was across. Some people told me there were appointments there at 6:15. Yeah, they went early. Are you reluctant to release a time because of this across the people?
Well, keep in mind that again, we're a conduit to some extent for a number of different organizations and entities that make appointments available through that site. CVS makes appointments available through that site. Walgreens makes appointments available. The regional collaboratives that the Lieutenant Governor talked about makes appointments available. The mass vaccination sites make appointments available. And because there are a lot of different entities that are making appointments available, we don't always have the ability to issue an edict on when those appointments go up. And so what I would say is, I don't want people staying up until midnight and trying to get on the site then. But what I would say is I think people should anticipate that over the course of the morning tomorrow, the various players and entities that participate in offering appointments on that site will be making appointments available.
But the mass vaccination appointments, are those your call, may all go at once?
They'll probably go over the course of the morning as well.
Governor, how do you roll Johnson & Johnson in? I know like Fenway, I think there's Pfizer, how would Johnson & Johnson kind of roll into the system?
I think it would depend to some extent on how much volume we're talking about with respect to their performance out of the gate. I do think one of the things we'll talk to everybody who's part of that supply chain about is I want to make sure that the supply chain, the people who are actually doing the vaccinating, whether they're providers or regional collaboratives or mass vac sites or community health centers or others, I just want to make sure that everybody is clued in a way where they are very comfortable that whichever vaccine they're using, they are sure they are going to be able to be clear to the people that they deliver it to about what it is, how it works, and whether or not they need to come back. The other issue that's obviously going to be part of this as well is the issue around storage is a lot different for J&J than it's been for some of the others.
Governor, can you talk a little bit about the decision to allow hospitals to start vaccinating again and climate change and how things are different?
So hospitals have been vaccinating since the beginning of this. In fact, I think the first piece of supply that we got actually went to hospitals. And at this point in time, hospitals have delivered more, and health systems, okay, have delivered more vaccine to more people than anybody else who's part of this world. And as we saw not much change with respect to supply, we told a number of the players in the provider world that there was going to be a pause on first doses. We now know we're going to get a little more than we got before, and I think as time goes by, if we get sort of any kind of significant increase in doses from the feds, you'll see providers do a lot more vaccinating. One of the things to remember about providers, the ones that work with regional collaboratives participate in our website and serve the public. But a lot of the provider community does outbound work to their patient populations, and they, basically call them and tell them, you can come in and get an appointment and get a vaccination. You're eligible. We would like to do that for you. So there's two universes here that we're focused on. We have multiple channels to distribute vaccine, but we have two universes. One is outbound calls coming from providers to patients who are theirs to bring them in, right? But there are a lot of people out there who would like to get vaccinated for whom that channel isn't necessarily going to work, which is a big part of the reason why we put together a pretty robust collection of providers, boards of health, mass vac sites, community health centers, and others who can actually serve people by appointment if somebody reaches out and says they want to schedule one.
Ends up with Johnson and Johnson, and the state ends up with a lot more vaccines. You anticipate it getting to a point where people can choose which one they want?
I would prefer people to just, if you get an appointment here and they're doing whatever they're doing here, come get vaccinated. If you get a call from your provider, your clinician, and they say they'd like you to come in, I mean, I get a flu shot every year. I have no idea who makes that flu shot. But I know for the most part it's a good thing. And I think if somebody wants to only have to get one dose, right, which is the difference really between J&J and Pfizer and Moderna, we will do what we can to make sure people have some ability to get a one dose.
Governor, why isn't there a state-run mass vac site in Worcester County? Do you see that coming to fruition in the near future?
We have multiple regional collaboratives in Worcester County. We have, Lieutenant Governor just walked through 3 of them. I think there's 4 of them, right? There's one with Harrington Hospital in South County. There's one with Haywood Hospital in North County. There's one with Worcester State College and UMass, and there's one more in Rutland.
Last question.
It appears that Northeastern University, after vaccinating those first responders and healthcare workers, took additional leftover doses to vaccinating them eligible members of its own campus community, rather than return those doses to the state where appointments would be opened up to the general eligible members of the population at large. Do you feel that that's appropriate? Was that a surprise to you? And do you know how many other colleges did that, or was that?
I think I'm going to let the Secretary take this one. We did a little homework on this yesterday. My answer is, well, I'll let Mary Lou speak to it.
So Northeastern University, as you said, had extra doses left over and started to work through individuals that they consider to be priorities. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when we had conversations with Northeastern, we actually moved some of their product to some community health centers, but ensured that they had second doses, so people who had their first doses would get fully vaccinated. And speak to so they're the only ones that we were aware of that had sort of still had doses available, and then we moved some of their product to a couple of the community health centers. And so they're just finishing off fully vaccinating people that they had started with. And I do not have information that others, we work a lot with the universities and the like, and we appreciate Northeastern not wanting to waste doses.
Are you able to talk about tomorrow some of the main points that you really want to get across to the legislature?
We've been, I mean, the Lieutenant Governor and I have been talking about COVID in all of its charming forms for the better part of the past year, every Monday with the legislative leadership, whether it's about money or about testing or about capacity or about guidance for employers or about vaccines. Secretary Sutters does a call every 2 weeks with everybody in the legislature, off which there are many follow-up communications that come from our administration. You know, the official sort of ask a question and get an answer in 48 hours document at this point since the start of the COVID pandemic is way north of 1,000 questions and 1,000 answers. We've been in regular contact and regular communication with the legislature about all of this stuff for a year. And I think part of the interest in the legislature on this, which is a good thing in my view, is starting to have discussions about the go forward, right? How do we make sure that we deal with all the issues associated with sort of the turning of the page? Not once the page is turned, but the turning of the page, which is sort of where I hope, God, we are now in this process. And I think that's a perfectly appropriate kind of conversation for us to be having.
Struck me was, in a recent interview, you said it was a lot more complicated than you ever imagined.
COVID? Oh my God, yeah, start to finish. This is the first time, this is the only pandemic I've ever had to deal with as a public official, yeah.
Is that something you want to relate to? I mean, it seems like everyone criticizes and criticizes, but it seems like you're dealing with such a delicate decision-making and stuff. Is that something that you want to get the legislators, if they try to ask you questions about, what biases the government the way that it should?
Look, I think, and I know that the Lieutenant Governor and Secretary Sutters think that the legislature has been a terrific partner in this all the way through. I also think a lot of our colleagues in local government have been terrific partners all the way through. I think people are tired, okay? I am. I know you guys are. And I think we are now at the point where there's actually an answer for people associated with this. There's a vaccine. We don't have enough of it. That creates enormous anxiety for people. I mean, I have friends of mine calling me up and giving me what for about this, that, and the other thing associated with the vaccine. And once I get them down off the ceiling and have a conversation with them about the fact that we're getting 130,000 first doses a week, and we have 4.5 million people in Massachusetts that we need to vaccinate, it at least creates some context around this. But I completely understand why people want to get vaccinated, and they would like to be eligible, and they want to take this off the table, and they would like to get back to something that looks like the life that they had before all this began. And I believe we'll get there, and I believe we'll get there in a reasonable period of time. And I especially am excited about, and I've been saying this for weeks now, that having a third manufacturer in this mix, in J&J, I think is hugely important to how fast the federal government can get vaccines out to states, and how fast states will be able to distribute it to providers and get people vaccinated. And I think a lot of people just wish it would be February or March and not April or May or June. But it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in what I would describe as, in the grand scheme of things, a period of time that isn't like another year of this. But it's not going to happen as fast as everybody would like it to, and I am wildly sympathetic to that. I would like it to happen tomorrow too, but
Governor, is there any change in the supply to the local boards of health? I just asked you that because there seems to be a change with the hospitals. Are you going to get more supply, or do you anticipate being able to give local boards more?
remember, almost all of the regional collaboratives that the Lieutenant Governor talked about are local boards are active participants in them. And there are a number of other collaboratives in development between and among provider organizations, local boards, and others. And I think part of what we're trying to do here is to create a framework where we have lots of capacity around the Commonwealth and the ability to deliver however many doses we get from the feds as quickly as we possibly can. But you got to be able to play at a reasonably significant level to be part of the sort of efficiency distribution channel, which means you got to be doing 750 doses a day, 7 days, 5 days a week. And what we have said to local boards that don't want to participate in collaboratives with others is what we'd really like you guys to focus on is, people who are hard to reach, right? Folks in senior housing, homebound folks, folks who have physical disabilities. Help us find those folks, and we'll get you the vaccine you need to get them vaccinated.
With New York allowing fans, are you thinking about it, letting people go into the garden in Fenway?
We've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks, and as I said before, our goal is to have answers to this question by the end of the week. Thanks, folks.